Good morning. Today, I'm going to break one of my rules. I made a rule early on in this project that I wasn't going to read books by friends of mine because I have too many writer friends and I'm going to end up hurting people's feelings or offending them. But I'm breaking the rule because two reasons. A couple days ago is my friend Aaron Parrett's birthday. And second, because this book, Maple and Lead, really deserves more attention. This book won the High Plains Book Award for Best Short Story Collection, and it's just a beautiful book. Aaron published it himself through his press, his own letterpress publishing company, Territorial Press, and you can see from this cover that there's a series of woodcuts inside that are really beautiful by his friend Seth Roby. So there's, aside from the whole layout of the book and everything being really beautifully done, Seth did these amazing woodcuts that are just such a nice compliment to the good writing that's in here. Here's another one. So I'm going to read from one of my favorite stories in here, which is called Evelyn's Footprints. When Evelyn was 5 years old, her father told her she was an ancient Indian princess, and that the stars at night were the campfires of all her ancestors. One of those stars was her mother, he told her, and that she had loved to go barefoot in the summertime as much as Evelyn did. Only when the lawn was flocked with the first hard frost of autumn would he make her wear socks and shoes, even though each morning before he went to work he put on long wool socks and carefully laced up his high caulked boots. Sometimes he would let her wind the laces around the stanchions on the uppers before sending her next door to Mrs. Coretti, who watched her during the day. Evelyn and her father lived in a tall gray house at the edge of town, down on the last street before the river, a narrow lane called Lavaseur Street, which followed the curve of the river for a quarter mile and then drifted back toward town. The lane itself had been paved late in the spring. Evelyn preferred the cool dust of the old road now. Now that the summer sun burned overhead, the fresh black asphalt got too hot in the afternoon, and she would have to run across to keep from burning her feet. Then she would reach the cool, squishy mud along the water with the horsetails poking through. Water striders and beetles sometimes crawled along the stems, and Evelyn crouched in thrall over their world as they left faint and delicate trails in the mud. In the evenings, she liked to sit on her father's lap and listen to him talk about his day in the woods while he tucked her hair behind her ears. Her father said she was a princess just like her mother had been. Her mother's name was Carol, and she had died in a car wreck in Mexico. Her father said the place was called Nogales, which she liked to say out loud. Evelyn was too small to know that she too had been in the car and had almost died. Her father had told her that the long, thin scar swooping up over her hip toward her belly was just the place where the old ones had sewn her up when they put the stuffing in her. Evelyn was also too small to know that eventually she would have a child of her own, a little boy she would call Travis, and that she would lead him by the hand along the same riverbanks, overwhelmed by her own memories of being a child, evoked by the strange miracle of her son. She would remember her father and the patient way he had held her hand as she waded in the muddy water. A few months after the city paved the lane, Evelyn's father decided it would look good to have a sidewalk next to the street so that folks wouldn't have to walk in the road. Not that the road got a lot of traffic, but in the evenings, families out for a walk would sometimes wander down their lane to draw close to the river without having to struggle through the tall grass and brush. As it was now, the curb jutted rudely up at the edge of all the lawns, inviting people to trip and stumble. For the last few evenings, when he came back down from sawing timber in the South Hills, Evelyn's father would finish his dinner out on the front porch while he sketched figures and numbers on a pad of yellow paper. Evelyn sat next to him at the table and drew pictures of squirrels and fish. Then her father let her play in the mud next to the river while he hammered boards together for what he called the forms. He rolled the word forms around in her mouth. She rolled the word forms around in her mouth softly a few times and then asked what it meant. The forms are what will hold the concrete in shape until it dries. Like mud? Yes, like mud, only mud that turns to rock. Evelyn accepted the promise of this miracle because she knew grown-ups had a way of making things happen that didn't seem possible. The cement truck, when it showed up, made her think of an elephant. It had what looked like a big round tumbling stomach, and the long chutes coming out reminded her of a trunk. She was impressed with the way the gray mud flowed wetly out of the chute and filled the flat ditch her father had dug. Her father held the edge of the chute and moved it back and forth as the truck inched slowly down the street. The mud splashed and piled up, and her father tamped it down with a rake. Later, the man who drove the truck helped her father smooth everything down with tools they called trowels. When they were finished, they sprayed off their boots with the garden hose and went inside. Evelyn crept out from around the corner of the house and looked at the new sidewalk. She could see her father and the cement man standing in the kitchen drinking cans of beer and smiling. Evelyn wondered what it would feel like to walk on the new sidewalk. The concrete was wet and warm on the bottoms of her feet, and she smiled as she ran. It was like the packed sand at the river's edge, though the footprints didn't slowly fill with water behind her. Instead, they sat as perfectly formed as she had left them, gray and shiny. She poked her finger in the wet cement because it reminded her of cookie dough, but it tasted bitter and dirty like lima beans. When her father came out onto the porch and saw Evelyn crouched over the end of a long trail of footprints that marched right up the middle of his new sidewalk, his first impulse was to cry, not over the ruined concrete, but because she looked so damn cute. I'm going to stop there, but this story goes on, and it's just a wonderful story. So check it out. Maple and Lead is the name of the book by my friend Aaron Parrett.